When I had him on a few weeks ago, I said, boy, I hope that I can have you back on so we can talk about climate change. And I was so happy to find out that Bjorn Lomborg has a brand new book out called False Alarm: How Climate Change Panic Costs Us Trillions, Hurts the Poor, and Fails to Fix the Planet. He's president of the Copenhagen Consensus Center, and he's joining us this morning on Daybreak 92.5 Fox News. It's good to see you. How are you?
Hey, true. It's good to be back, and I'm good. How are you?
We are fantastic. And boy,
I see you're back in your studio.
Yes, the last time
Yes.
I was in the non-palatial home studios, technically my bedroom, if I have to be honest. And now we are back in the studio, so it's good that you can see us in the friendly confines here. Boy, talk about timely though. The book, it's interesting that this comes out today on the heels of what yesterday was the big announcement here in the States. Joe Biden and the talk about the trillions of dollars in spending and talking about possibly kind of a Green New Deal light and some of the issues that they would be tackling. I kind of want to break down each topic that you have in the title of the book. First, we might even talk about this. The panic costs us trillions. Can you talk a little bit about that and the specifics of not the money in general, like the kind of trillions of dollars you're talking about, but the panic that costs us?
Oh, God, yes. So, look, fundamentally, global warming is a real problem, but it's not the end of the world. And when people are panicked, we make really, really bad decisions. And we are panicked. If you look at some of the statistics, so Washington Post did a survey of school kids. They found 57% of them are afraid of climate change. Students were protesting before Corona and basically saying, why should I study for a future I won't have? They literally believe that there's a chance that they won't get to be adults. And if you ask adults across the world, it turns out almost half of everyone, so 48%, believe that global warming will likely lead to the extinction of the human race. This is not, a small change. This is people believing it's the end of times. And that, of course, not only makes you waste trillions because you just throw everything in the kitchen sink at it,
right,
but it also makes you personally and psychologically terrified. And look, if it really was the end of the world, if it was a meteor, hurtling towards Earth, we should be honest about it and tell people. But if it's not, and it isn't, that's what my book documents, and that really is what the UN climate panel tells us. Then we need to tell the truth, and we need to stop agonizing. We need to start realizing it's one of the many problems we need to fix.
Yeah. So what about that? The Paris Climate Accord, the discussions as to whether or not we should be doing specific policies. What do we do? I mean, what are the examples of maybe some of the things that we have done in the past that have worked, or has it not worked? I mean, where are we as a condition in the world of ours? What is the condition of our climate?
So look, for the last 30 years, we've been scared, and increasingly so now that half of everyone believes we're going to end the world with this. Yeah. But already back in the 80s, the UN was already talking about if we don't fix climate change and a lot of other environmental catastrophes, it would be the equivalent of a nuclear all-out exchange by the year 2000. Now, needless to say, that not only didn't happen, but it's not. Nobody ever thought about these issues in anywhere near those apocalyptic terms. So again, there's a problem. It's not the end of the world. We've actually not managed to do virtually anything. We've spent a lot of resources, but we've done virtually nothing. The UN last year, surprisingly, honestly said that all the panic and all the policies that we've done since 2010 have led to a change that you can't tell. They're basically saying it looks like the world that we envisioned if we'd done nothing since 2005, if we'd done no climate policy. So fundamentally, we've had lots and lots of heat. We've had lots of discussions. We've scared lots of kids, but we've actually achieved nothing. And that's, in some ways, the worst possible outcome of all worlds. We've not fixed climate change, but we have wasted lots of money, and we have scared kids witless. So you asked about the Paris Agreement. Look, we promised in the Paris Agreement to cut carbon emissions across the world for China, India, the U.S., Europe, everywhere else. Right. Trump, famously opted out, but it's still not actually happened. But what is clear is that even if we were to do all of this, the cost would be somewhere between $1 and $2 trillion a year. That's the costliest treaty ever for the world. And the net benefit, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference in 2100. So after spending, somewhere between 50 and $100 trillion, the world would not be able to tell the difference. We'd have a difference in temperature outcome of about 0.3 degree Fahrenheit. So instead of, getting to 7.4, we'd be getting to 7.1 degree Fahrenheit by the end of the century. You wouldn't be able to measure that. So we really need to both do smarter and do it cheaper.
Yeah. Well, and a couple of other questions too. Bjorn Lomborg's new book is False Alarm: How Climate Change Panic Costs Us Trillions, Hurts the Poor, and Fails to Fix the Planet. I would encourage you to get out and purchase this book and find out more and get the details. As we have been talking about this, as you have been talking about this, one of the major stumbles, and it's even evident in the pandemic now, is that people are worried that they're not getting the information, the facts, that it always appears as if for every child that comes along and steps up to a podium at the UN and says, we've got to do something and everything, we're all going to die, there are 500 scientists that would sign on and say, well, hold on, we don't have to be so alarmist. There might be some things happen. But you don't hear about that portion of it. You only hear about the alarmists. And it's kind of people trying to find where they could, even if they wanted to, find this place where we can all come together, where we can agree that, and maybe you can even speak to this, are there specifically things that would show promise, or that things that we need to do, or places that could use a little bit of help if it wasn't panic, if it was just common sense and we can speak to the issue?
Yeah. So, fundamentally, the UN Climate Panel is considered the gold standard of information on climate change. And I reference a lot of that in the book, and I show you all the data. Just to give you a sense of proportion, they estimate that in about 50 years, in the 2070s, we will have a problem with global warming that will be equivalent of each one of us on planet Earth being somewhere between 0.2 and 2% less rich than we would otherwise have been. But remember, by then, that's a problem, but it's not the end of the world. Right. By then, the UN estimates each person on the planet will be 2.63 times richer than we are today. So, almost 3 times richer. Yeah. But if we have global warming and if we don't do anything about it, instead of being 2.63 times richer, we'll be 2.56 times richer. Oh no, it's the end of the world. No, this is a problem. This is not the end of the world. That kind of information you need to get. But you're absolutely right. We hear all the scare stories. Why? Because they're just much better at creating clicks and getting funding and getting everybody to get attention to what should you do. So one story that ran across the whole world last year was that because of sea level rise, which is a real problem from climate change, we will see 187 million people flooded by the end of the century. How did they do that? Well, they just looked at the sea level rise of about 3 feet, pretty high sea level rise, and then they just assumed that everybody would do nothing for the next 80 years. Miami would just sit there and do nothing for the next 80 years, which is just silly. Right. We actually know how to do that. And the very study that showed the 187 million people also said, what happens if you actually do smart stuff, which we expect people to do? If you just do the sensible stuff, that is, have better levees, have better protection, make sure that you protect yourselves against both waves and wave action, then instead of 187 million people, you would have 600 times less, about 300,000 people being flooded by the end of the century globally. This is less than half the number of people that move out of California every year. It's not a problem. It's not the end of the world. Right. And so we need to get a sense of proportion. You asked, so what are the smart things we can do? Yeah. Well, look, we need to fix climate change, but we can't afford to do it badly. We need to do this smartly. And this is all about innovation. Look, right now the problem is that green energy is more expensive generally. That's why you need to subsidize it. That's why you need a $2 trillion plan from Biden. Right. You need to subsidize this to make it happen. Most countries can't afford that. Even rich countries like the US can only afford a small part of this. If we could innovate the price of green energy down below fossil fuels, we'd have solved the problem. Everyone would switch, not just rich, well-meaning Americans, but Chinese and Indians and everybody else.
Right.
So the real trick here is spend a lot more resources on innovation. Not only will that fix climate change, it'll also be much cheaper than what we're doing today. And it give you a lot of other benefits, like, we'd probably develop a better battery for your cell phone and lots of other things in the slipstream. So it's a little bit like the Apollo project to go to the moon. Spend lots of money, do something that'll both fix climate, but also generate lots of other innovations and be a lot cheaper than what we're doing today. That's what is needed to fix climate change.
Yeah, and I think that's it is interesting how Tesla is the example, I guess, of how people are willing to, if they can. Every single person that I talk to that has a Tesla loves it, absolutely loves everything about it, top to bottom, from the technology to right. They love it. There's communities here. We have a community in Southwest Florida, Babcock Ranch, which is the first solar community of its kind anywhere, where everything works off solar during the day. They hit off the grid at night, but the amount of electric vehicles in that community, how it operates, people love it. They love this. The idea of doing it, I guess it just becomes when individuals believe that the only way to get to that place, because it's not happening fast enough, is to panic merchant, is to just make everything so overblown, when if they would just kind of step back, we could get to the place that they want to, as long as they trust individuals, as long as they trust when they invest in companies. We're not investing in governments to do the work. We're investing in businesses and individuals, in the resources of those individuals to come up with the innovations. It's Tesla's not the government. Tesla is the company is Elon Musk. It's a person. It's an individual. Believing in individuals and people, that's a big part of it too, right?
Yes. But again, I also walk through, for instance, how much will electric vehicles help us, and the honest answer is not all that much, unfortunately. It's a great idea, and I some of my friends have Teslas, and yes, they're wonderful to drive. Remember, they're also very, very expensive, which is why mostly rich people get them, and we're somehow subsidizing very rich people to buy these Teslas at much discounted prices.
True.
But they actually cut very little CO2. So the International Energy Agency estimates that if by 2030, we'll actually have managed to get about 300 million electric cars into the world, which is much, much more. We have about 5 million right now. So it's a huge increase that we're going to be seeing over the next 10 years. If we manage to do that, it will reduce the problem of global warming by 0.1%. It's simply not a very big impact.
Right.
Partly because they still use electricity, and much of it will still come from fossil fuels, but they will cut some tons of CO2. Partly because as they stop using oil will become cheaper. So, China and many other places are just going to use more oil.
Yeah.
So the reality here is it is much harder than just, putting yourself, committing yourself to doing a little bit. If you look at what happened with Corona, Corona has shut down much of the world. What was the outcome? When China was most shut down, it still produced 78% of the emissions that it normally does. Because you still have to live, you still have to heat your homes, you still have to do all these other things. So even if we all collectively stop driving, stop flying, stopped all these things, which we've done under Corona, we will still emit most of this. It's not just a little bit we need to do. And that, I think, is the biggest problem, that we don't have a good sense of what it takes to get ourselves. Sorry, I just got to stop.
Oh, that's okay.
My phone is decided.
That's okay.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
But fundamentally, we need to get a grip of what it takes. It'll take an enormous amount. So actually, New Zealand is the only country to have investigated what will it cost us to get to net zero by 2050. Remember, that's what Biden just promised yesterday.
Right.
It will cost them 16% of their GDP by 2050.
Wow.
That is the equivalent of $5 trillion every year for the U.S.
No way.
That's a lot of money.
Can't do it.
By 2050.
Right.
Again,
and by the way, by the way, not to mention batteries, right? When it comes to, and I know we've got to run, and I don't want to keep you too long, and I appreciate your time, but also batteries, right? When it comes to Tesla and batteries and the battery, right now, where do all these batteries go? Have we
and
even?
that's another issue. I mean, we probably undercounted the cost that it'll cost to actually recycle them. But again, the idea here is I don't think we have any good sense of how much we need. Right now, the U.S. has enough battery storage, all of the batteries in electric cars and all of the utilities and so on, to store all the electricity that the U.S. uses for 14 seconds. So, we simply do not have a sense of the magnitude, because remember, if you're actually going to run your country on solar and wind, you need not just storage overnight when the sun is not there, and not even just for a couple of weeks when there's bad weather and no wind, but you basically need it for seasons and possibly even years. This is impossible at current cost. What, again, we can do is invest dramatically more in innovation, not just in solar and wind and battery technology, but also nuclear. Bill Gates and many others are investing in fourth generation nuclear that they say is going to be incredibly cheap and incredibly safe. Again, they've said that about the other three generations. So, let's see if that happens.
Right.
But the trick here is to remember, if we can innovate the price down below fossil fuels, not only will we have done an amazing achievement for the world, but it'll also make American companies much richer, and it'll make everyone want to do this instead of this being the constant thing where we have to scare our kids witless in order to just do a little bit. So really, this is about being smarter about climate and stop wasting trillions and start actually doing the stuff that'll help the world.
He's the best. That's why I was so excited to have him on, Bjorn Lomborg, and his book, False Alarm, How Climate Change Panic Costs Us Trillions, Hurts the Poor, Fails to Fix the Planet. It's all there in the book, and it's a fantastic read, and I would encourage you to get it today. You've been so generous with your time. Thanks so much, and I know you're busy, got a lot going on, and I hope we'll be able to do this again. A lot of other things I would love to discuss as well. So
Absolutely,
thanks so much.
Drew. It was great to be on.
All right, well, good to see you. All right, it's Daybreak 92.5 Fox News, right all along.